to be here with you. Great. So before I start sharing my slides and starting to talk about the project, I'll just quickly introduce myself and tell you a little bit about my background. So at the moment, I am a researcher at the University of Edinburgh in the Institute for Design Informatics at the School of Design. And I work on creativity and AI and how humans and artificial intelligence systems can collaborate. How can humans use these new technologies, emerging technologies, in a way that is responsible and that also enhances their creativity. But I've not always worked on that because I come from a mixed background. So I was trained as a classical pianist for many years and then got a degree in philosophy. And it's only in the last 9 years that I became interested in how these new technologies are going to change creative workflows and the notion of creativity itself. So coming from a creative and humanities background into the world of technology with the intention of understanding what are its implications for society and for the creative sector more specifically. So that said, I'm going to share my screen and start looking find here. Right. Great. Yeah, so what I'm going to do in this 35, 40 minutes, I will try to keep it around that time to give enough time at the end for discussion, is to talk about a project that I recently started at the university, which is funded by the Bridging Responsible AI Divides program and the Arts and Humanities Research Council. And it is a project in collaboration with Adobe. It's an intersectoral project that is funded by this program of BRAID. And starting, I know that the artificial intelligence and in general, how it's going to impact the creative sector is very much of a hot concern right now. So that's why I'm keen on leaving time at the end for discussion, because I would be very glad to hear also from your experience on using or not using these tools. Right. So I like to start actually by looking at the past before starting to talk about AI. So the first part of the talk will be to look back, to look ahead, so understanding how the previous interactions between creativity and technology, what it is that they can teach us for the future of these interactions between creators and AI technology, but also other emerging technologies that might come out in the next years. And this can be helpful to understand where we are going with the use of AI in the creative sector and learn from past experiences. I will then share with you some results of a longitudinal study that we recently conducted with a group of creative professionals, and then conclude by shifting the perspective to ethical considerations that we should take when using these tools in our creative workflow. So starting from the past.
I'm a bit late.
So art history, I don't know if is it me. I hear like some voices. I don't know if someone.
Yeah, it was someone who unmuted themselves by mistake. I've
right.
muted them
Okay.
again.
No, sorry. No, I was just checking if it was something on my side. Great. So art history shows that artists have leveraged technological innovations in the past as tools to express their artistic concepts. So from photography, and here what is shown is what is considered to be the very first photograph ever taken, and to portable paint tubes that allowed artists to paint on plein air, so not just in their studios, and this revolutionized the history of painting, and up to graphic editor software like Adobe Photoshop that we still use now. So all these are examples of technologies that have been used for creative purposes in the arts, which is the field that is normally associated with creativity. But creativity is not just limited to the arts, which I think is also important to remember. So the relation between technology and creativity has also shaped the history of science, not just the history of art. And this is a drawing of what is the first known attempt to apply a pendulum to control the rate of a clock by Galileo. But also the invention of the telescope at the turn of the 16th and 17th centuries is regarded as one of the most influential technological innovations in science, because it not only enabled the observation of previously unknown celestial bodies, but also transformed the relation between the human and the universe and what was the role of humanity. And lastly, the discovery by Wilhelm Röntgen of X-rays, which happened almost by accident while he was experimenting with cathode rays. So in both the artistic and the scientific fields, the relationship between creativity and technological innovations forms this virtuous cycle where the advancement of one of these elements propels and stimulates the development of the other. And if we go back to our examples and try to order them on a timeline, this timeline stretches also way back in time, way before the 17th century, for example, to the techniques that were used in ancient Greece for crafting pottery. So we can go way, way back, even earlier than this, actually. So in a sense, it would be a bit arrogant, I think, from our side of people living in the present to say that what is happening now with technology, so generative AI is one of the things, one of the topics of today's talk. It would be a bit arrogant to say that this is something that is completely revolutionary and completely transformative and new. But instead, I like to see it only as one of the steps in this timeline. It is certainly a transformative one, but nevertheless, it's important, I think, to keep the perspective that it's not something that is completely new, but that instead we can have the means to know how to deal with it by considering how we dealt with other creative technologies in the past, which have been equally transformative. So just quickly to say about generative AI. So what is generative AI? We call generative AI now these deep learning models, which are trained on massive amounts of data to generate content, which can be text, but also programming code, voice, music, videos, and images. But generative AI is not new in itself as well. So what we call generative AI now refers to these models, these deep learning models, but generative artificial intelligence was something that already existed in the 50s and 60s and 70s when also artists, actually, people who were a hybrid between being an artist and an engineer, started to experiment with these new models at the time to see what were the opportunities that they could give us for developing their creativity and art. So again, also generative AI per se is not new, but when we talk about generative AI, we talk now about these models here. So what is that distinguishes this wave from previous generative AI technologies, or in general, artificial intelligence or computational technologies? Well, what is new is for sure the scale of adoption of these models. They are accessible through internet platforms up to a certain extent, so people can try them out. And also the rate of technological development, which especially in the last months has been really impressive and hard to keep up. So this is certainly new in respect to previous technologies. So if we now try to have a look at the impact that this transformative technology can have on creativity, and I will do that just by giving you some insights from this study that we recently developed. This is just, of course, one very narrow perspective on it because it just comes from this particular study. But hopefully some of these insights can then trigger some discussions that impact also other fields of creativity. So just to give you a little bit of background on this study. So this is a study that we conducted as part of the project, the CREA-TEC project that I was mentioning at the beginning, which is a collaboration with Adobe. And the research questions that we explore in this project are mainly how is artificial intelligence going to change the creative workflow? What are the tools that are mostly used by creators and why? What are the pain points and the successes that people have in using these tools? And also how it's going to change the sense of agency and creative agency that creators have when using these tools. So the key aim of this project is to bring people from academia and people from the industry together to see how research can support the responsible development of these technologies in the future. And so this is actually my core mission, let's say, with this project, to make sure that the voice of creators is heard and that the way that these technologies are being developed enhances their sense of creative agency and also their creative possibilities. More specifically, so this study was the first part of the project. We are already entering the second part, and I will talk to you a little bit about it at the end of the talk. But this particular study was the beginning of the project, and we did a longitudinal study of 3 weeks with 5 creative professionals in the marketing and advertising sector. And we wanted to see how they were integrating AI tools in their workflow and what were their experiences with them. So before moving to the key takeaways, you will see that some of these takeaways refer also to the use of Adobe tools. But we didn't, that wasn't a constraint in the study. So basically we told these creators to use whatever tool they were normally using in their workflow, because we were keen for the study to be as reflective as possible of their real experience in integrating AI in their work. So let's start with the first takeaway. So what emerged from the study is that the part of concept creation and ideation is the stage of the workflow that participants identified as their preferred one. So they enjoy the collaborative moment of ideation in the team, where everyone is throwing a lot of different ideas and seeing what is that works and what is that doesn't work. And the main frustration instead that has been expressed by participants is that AI is not creative enough to give them new ideas and support them in this ideation stage. So this was a bit of a pain point, if you want, in the use of this technology for the very first part of the creative workflow. They wish for the AI tools to be more creative and support them more in the brainstorming stage of the process. So AI, this is due to the fact that artificial intelligence tools lack most of the characteristics that are required for creative thinking and ideation, such as the level of nuance and the capacity of bringing to the process the necessary emotions, feelings, and experiences that spark the ideation that is required. And another frustration comes from the fact that AI does not understand the creator's needs, and this term understanding was often used by participants, even though we know that AI tools don't properly understand as humans do. But what they meant here is the fact that they are not aligned with their aims. So this was just one funny example from the study when one of the participants was trying to get an image of a smartphone in this photo here, and the AI instead gave them an image of a cat without knowing why. So this is what they mean by understanding when prompting these AI tools, often just using natural language, which is the kind of interface that we are available at the moment. It's not always possible for these tools to give you back what is that you really wanted from them. So this was one of the key frustrations that emerged from the study. And they were all quite clear in saying that the AI is something that should support and not replace aspects of their creative processes. So what was consistent among participants was the fact that the use of AI was always accompanied by what they called craft. So the use of more traditional tools and workflows, while AI instead was providing them only with some inspiration or some initial content that their craft and skills then turned into the final product. And the creators in the study refused to use AI for the last stage of the workflow when they had to present the final product to the client, which in the case of the study, it was a fake client because it was myself as the researcher in the study. They refused to just present the client with a product that was generated by AI because it was lacking the authenticity that they believe is necessary and is core to the nature of their work. And as part of it, there is also a strong sense of community and not hurting the creative community in general by using these tools for the final stages of the creative workflow. So what is that AI instead is good for? Well, there are some things where they find it beneficial, and one of them, probably the most impactful way in which AI is being integrated in the workflow, is the fact that it helps visualize ideas quickly. So basically, speeding up the process, the stages of the process that go from the brainstorming stage to the delivery of the first concept idea to the client or other stakeholders. And this helps them because it helps to put everyone on the same page, as this participant was saying, basically to be able to show people what is that they are thinking about for that particular product. And the image that you can see here is from one of the participants in the study, where they created this mood board with all the images generated by AI to then go through a process of curation and selection of the ones that were best for them. And one thing that was particularly helpful for this participant was the fact that just by looking at this mood board, they could spot some things that they might do differently. For example, they wanted 2 different images per context. So there was the forest, the seaside, and the mountain. And one of the images should only have the bottle, which was the product that they needed to advertise. And the other image instead was the bottle and a person. So just by looking at the mood board, they saw that they didn't have an image of a bottle and a person for one of the contexts. This is the final mood board that they have. So they could go back and regenerate the images with the AI. So what they said is that if I instead did that just with a photo shoot, I would have needed to go back and do the photo shoot again, which would have been really costly. Instead, just mocking it up with the system could allow me to save time and money when instead I go out and do the photo shoot for the final product. So AI not for delivering the final product, but to mock up the results and speed up the process. And another reason why they felt the AI might be beneficial for their creative workflow is the fact that it can assist them. For this particular participant, ChatGPT was particularly helpful, and they considered ChatGPT or other large language models as a kind of an intern or an assistant that hasn't taken over any of her tasks, but as a tool that is there available to support them. And specifically for the parts of the workflow where they lacked the confidence. So if there is a part of the workflow where they feel less confident, which in this case was the copywriting side, having that additional support was helpful also from an emotional point of view to proceed and move forward in the workflow. So these were, again, just a few general high-level insights from the study that we conducted. And there are many more and much more nuanced, but I feel these were the key ones that might also allow us to have a discussion on what is instead your experience and what you find helpful or not in using these tools. So we started with a retrospective on the use of technology in the arts and sciences to then address what can be the impact that AI has on the creative sector. And I turn now to some ethical considerations instead that we should make when deciding to incorporate AI into creative processes. So I feel that given the fast pace of AI development, we are all increasingly experiencing a kind of fear of missing out. We do not want to be left behind. We want to be ahead and know what's happening and make sure that we are not disadvantaged by the speed of the development of these tools. But this means that we, and by we I mean both individuals and businesses alike, we might forget to establish some clear ethical guidelines or guardrails on the use of these tools. So what we should do and what people should do instead is probably to slow down a bit and consider what is that we need to do and what can be done to make sure that we use these tools responsibly. So here I'm just going to give you some ideas for what is that should be considered in this case. And the first thing that I believe we should all do is to ask the why question. So why do we need to use AI? And is it the case that we need to use it at all costs? So I'm pretty sure that all of you, or nearly all of you, have seen this tweet at the time on X, which quickly became viral by the artist and sci-fi writer Joanna Maciejewska, which actually who pointed to this why question. Like she was saying that she wanted AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, and not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my laundry and dishes. So this relates to the why question I was asking. We should first of all reflect on what we want to use AI for and why do we find its use valuable. And even though there seems to be a trend now in using AI for generating creative content, we should first ask if the task we are thinking to use the AI for is not something that we would rather do ourselves, either because we enjoy doing it or because we are still better than the AI. So this is just a simple flow chart, very basic, that I created to identify the key questions that we can ask before setting off to use AI in our work. And all these questions are aimed to help us answering this why question. So why do I need to use AI? So one of the first question is the AI going to make the process quicker? And for now, ignore where the no arrow is leading, as they are all leading to the same question that we will see at the end. But then if we reply yes, maybe the AI can help me solve and do things quicker, then we can ask, well, is it helpful to save money? Like in the case of the participant, she was saying, yes, well, if I mock up things with the AI, then it can save me time and money when I go and do the actual photo shoot. And then we can ask if we have access to the necessary data. The question of data, we will come back to to it later on is a crucial one, especially now with the latest developments in these technologies. Or we can ask whether it can improve customer experience or provide a competitive advantage in respect to other businesses, if it is compliant with regulations, and if I have a team who has the necessary capabilities to develop and run these systems. And finally, if we have a plan to measure its performance. So of course, we do not need to satisfy all of these questions in order for us to say, yes, we can go ahead and try to use some of these tools, because it might be that for your work, you just need to respond yes to one or two of these questions. It might be that if AI helps you save time or money, it's already enough to justify its use. But instead, if you have replied no to one or more of these questions, you can then ask yourself if you can address them and see if instead you can turn the reply to the question to a yes. And then, if so, you can go ahead and try to use it. But if not, there is no need for you to use it if you don't find value in using it. And there are, of course, other alternatives. And so AI, the bottom line is that AI is not always the answer to our questions. And it's important to keep this in mind. So let's say that you're satisfied with the answers that you could give to the questions above, and you decide to go ahead and use AI. There are still a few things, of course, left to consider, and here I'm just pointing to two big ones. We could talk for hours for each one of them, but we can, of course, I'm sure there will be some questions and discussions at the end. And so two key considerations in this respect are the question of human oversight and of provenance and attribution. So starting with human oversight. So by human oversight here, I mean the possibility for us as users of this technology to make sure that we have control over the process and over the creation of the product that is emerging from this process. So it's what is important in this respect is that the user of this technology always feels, but also has objectively a control over the technology. So this is what I mean by human oversight in this case. And the control might come at the stage of performing the process. So it can be, I have oversight over this particular process, which involves the use of AI tools because I have the skills to use the system properly, but it can be also human oversight that comes later on in the process when the product or the data that has been generated is already there, and then you can go back and check whether it is appropriate, whether it responds to real needs of your clients or stakeholders, or whether it is authentic content that reflects and is accurate in what it depicts. So the human oversight can come at two different stages of the process, either during the process or after the process to check the results. But if we think of human oversight during the process, and here is where the second stage of the project comes, and this is a series of workshops that some of you might have already have seen that will happen at the Edinburgh Futures Institute in the spring, and you have the dates here. And this series of workshops are aimed at identifying and discussing the new and the future-proof skills that are needed by creators in this current revolution of technology, and also what are the training opportunities that we as education providers should offer to support you in covering these needs. So yes, I see that Cam is also here in the meeting, and she and the innovation service team at the Edinburgh Futures Institute are going to co-design with the research team these workshops and host them. So yeah, the registration is closing soon. So if you're interested, just please do register. And I'm sure that it will be an interesting discussion. So this is aimed at understanding how can we have oversight over the process of using AI. So these are just some of the aims of the second part of the project, the CREA-TEC project. So through these workshops, understanding what are the gaps in the training and skill development offerings, what are the adaptation strategies that creators need to put in place in order to integrate AI in their workflow in a beneficial way, and understand also the many barriers that we still have. I think there is a narrative around artificial intelligence democratizing the creative process. Well, it's not always the case. So we want to understand what are the real barriers that we might just oversee, and what we can do to make sure that these technologies are developed in a way that is more accessible to everyone. So closing up with the big hot topic of provenance and attribution. Well, I'm sure that many of you are aware of this recent consultation that just closed, that was opened by the UK government to receive responses on a possible change in the copyright regulations and the use of data. What this has resulted in many different kinds of reactions, but from the creative community side, these reactions have been also concern on what do these changes might mean for their work. So there was a statement on AI training that was signed by more than 40,000 people, mostly in the creative sector, that was trying to point at the risks of changing these regulations, and series of other reactions also on the media about it. So now this consultation has closed. I know that many creatives could contribute to that. I think they were more than 10,000 responses for sure, because it was 10,000 a week before it was closing. So at least the creative sector could make their voice heard. So now it's a matter of seeing whether this as a result or not on what are the next steps in this. But as individuals, so what is that we can do in relation to this issue of provenance? So we are talking here about copyright, but content provenance issue is much larger than just copyright itself, because it also includes the use and remix and reuse of content, that as other considerations that are outside of just copyright regulations. So again, in our own experience of using these tools, what we can do is, of course, make sure that we check the sources when we use this data. One of the questions in that flowchart was, do I have the right to use the data? Do you have the data that is needed to use these tools or to train these tools if you're able to do a model yourself and train it? Be transparent when you're using it, and know that many companies are trying now to have their own internal regulations on the use of AI and how they are presenting it to their audiences, and of course give right and attribution and credit whenever you can, when you're using or reusing content. So these are simple things that we can still do even in the wait of understanding what is going to happen from a regulation point of view. And I just wanted to point out some one of the key tools that you can use. It's freely accessible. This is the content provenance and authenticity tool. The C2PA is a coalition and that was founded some years ago by, it was originally by Adobe, but then also Microsoft, the BBC, and now many tech and media companies are adhering to this standard. This is a tool that they have available online, the verified tool. You can basically drag and drop content, now it's visual content, images, and be able to see some parts of its history of generation, whether AI was used in the process of making that image, and other information about it. It doesn't work for all images now because it only works if that image had been tagged with some metadata that the content, the C2PA standard recognizes. But the aim for the C2PA is to have a wide coverage and widespread adoption of this standard so that ideally in the future we would be able to access metadata and information about the provenance of every content that we consume online. Right, and talking about authenticity and content authenticity, I just wanted to point out what will be the final part of this project, which will be a commission of 3 artworks for a final exhibition that will happen in Edinburgh in August. And the commission is called Authenticity Unmasked, and it will be aimed at understanding how artificial intelligence is changing perceptions of authenticity. So the 3 artists are here. So it's Georgia Garner, Kinari Saraya, and Demystification, and they are already working on the artworks that they will present during the exhibition. It will be a very interactive exhibition. So again, another opportunity for this community, if you're interested in these themes, to come and have a discussion about it. So I am pretty much done. So this is just some information from you on how to stay updated on what's happening in this project, or get in touch if you want to be involved. We are all very keen on collaborating and integrating voices from the creative community. And as I said, also this second stage, the workshops and also the exhibition will be very collaborative. So we would be really glad to hear from you on whether you want to be involved at any of these stages. But yeah, I'm very keen to hear your thoughts on this and your experiences. So I will unshare the screen now and look forward to your questions.